Can I call you Kent?
Oh yeah, that's what I go by.
All right, that's what I thought.
Since birth. I'll always jokingly say, like when I was born, like, you know, my parents just planned it. Like I'm a junior, and you know, the household I grew up in was pretty volatile.
Yeah.
My parents were fighting a lot of yelling, and I'm a mama's boy, like stone cold mama's boy. And my older sisters were like 9 and 11 years older than me, and they both babied me. And I think, you know, as a joke, I'll always say, like, my mom decided to call me Kent because if she was teeing off on Roger, she wanted her baby boy to know, like, everything was cool between me and her.
Yeah. How are you today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for having me here.
All right. I want to start with where you're from. Are you originally from Columbus or originally from St. Louis?
St. Louis. I was born in St. Louis, and my dad got in 1980. Got a different job. I think it was like headhunters actually sought him out. He was an engineer at a fiberglass company in St. Louis called KSH, and a company called Plascolite hired him. And so I was 10, and we moved here for his job.
Okay. And that was back in the 80s, 70s, 80s?
1980. April of 1980 was when we made the move. So I remember being you know, right when we first moved here, like driving from Westerville to his job a couple times and seeing all those like all nude strip clubs like around Agler Road, because Plascolite was on Joyce.
Okay, I was going to ask you where that was.
And so like those all nude reviews, you know, at 10 that got my attention. And then, you know, later on at like 29 and 30 when you know, I'm a practicing heroin addict and drug dealer, and I've got a little side gig delivering pizzas for Donato's on Agler and Cassidy. I didn't really work too much. Like I would cherry pick the orders to those strip clubs, and I'd hang out there until my walkie-talkie went off asking me where I was.
There was an interesting thing on the news years ago. It was probably about 10 years ago, where there was a robbery at the Centerfold Lounge.
Okay.
And there was a news crew there, and they were interviewing. Or I don't even think they were interviewing people. It was just a news, like a street beat journalist out there saying, hey, you know, this Centerfold Lounge was robbed for the third time this week or whatever. And behind her was, in the parking lot, was a fleet of Pepsi cars, because Pepsi was right down the street. There's all these dudes that were on on their lunch break.
That's the one by the airport, right?
Yeah.
I've spent some time there too. And I'm not like a huge strip club guy. Like I'm not going to lie and say, oh, I've never gone.
Yeah.
But I had an old roommate that was a DJ there, and like I'd pick him up for band practice, and he'd be like winding down his shift, and so I'd be like sitting at the bar, and he'd, you know, play a song, and all the ladies would come by and be like, oh, you want to dance? You want to dance? And I'd be like, oh, no, thanks, ma'am. I'm just here to give my roommate a ride home.
Yeah. Speaking of bands, what bands were you in back in the day?
One of the big ones was Poets of Heresy, hip hop band.
Yeah.
A little bit before that, one of the incarnations of Devil Cake with Mike Gorley from Westerville, and my nephew Gabe, and a guy named Paul Baker and Diego. And man,
And Diego.
Yes. I mean, it's a trip. Like I'll try to keep things moving forward, but
did Diego pass away?
He did last year.
Okay.
And man, it freaked me out. Like I'm looking at old band photos. I'm like, shit, man. Like 3 out of the 5 of us are dead. Like it's kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But I was in a band called Big Ass Yard Sale.
Yes, I remember that.
I was in a band for a little bit called Jack Neat. And then I kind of bottomed out real hard by mid 2000, any bands I was in, I was given the boot because I was falling apart. I got out of treatment, and I was in a band called Devil's Choice. Eric Wrong and the Do-Rights, Shotgun Kelly.
I remember.
And then I've kind of just been
These
on
were all drums?
Yeah, always drums,
Okay.
at least for me. And God, lately, it sucks. Like right before this pandemic hit, me and 3 other guys, and these are dudes, like 3 guys I've known for 30 years. It's like family. And we've been working on these songs since like summer of 2017. Have had a couple singers that hadn't worked out. And like a couple weeks before lockdown went into effect, we had a guy come out like to sing for us, dude named Jordan Mitchell. He's a little younger than us. He fucking killed it, and was just like so natural and easy going to hang out with. You know, guy I've been getting, you know, starting a friendship up with for, you know, over the last year. Met on social media and
Jordan Mitchell.
Yeah.
What kind of music is it?
Man, it's like hard rock with a variety of other influences in there, but the easiest thing to say is like hard rock. And Jordan can rip on guitar. He's a great singer. We had one practice. We're like, this is promising. You know, and then that's been it for a while.
I wonder if I know him.
You'd probably recognize him.
I'll probably have to look. Yeah.
He was in a
usually,
band
I'm not really good with names. I've got a photographic memory, so I remember everything that I see usually.
He's in a band called The Beggars, and played guitar and sang in that band. We're gonna try and do some studio stuff like while all this is happening.
Yeah.
And it's lots of adjusting for everybody.
Yeah.
Like one of the guys in the band has like a family member that just got moved off you know, the COVID unit to regular unit, and you know, it's been fingers crossed for months.
Yeah.
You know, for his family member to be okay.
Yeah, I know people who've had it. I know somebody who died from it. It's hard. It's rough. You know, it's like you want to go on. You want to get on with your life, and you want also at the same time respect others. It's a hard thing to do. So music has been in your blood for forever.
Yes.
One thing that I've always been fascinated about you, and I've never seen anybody do something like this, and those are the heads.
Oh, it's.
I mean, I think long after you're gone, one of the major things that you're going to be remembered for are those heads.
I'll take it.
I've been in people's houses and their stores and stuff, and I'm like, hey, there's a head right there.
Man, it's so weird because like I'm self-taught. You know, I turned 50 last year. You know, like my youngest nephew, when he was a little boy, like told my sister, like, Mom, I don't think Uncle Kent's a real adult. And she was like, well, he's kind of not. And like, I still kind of think of myself in that way. And, you know, when I go to gallery shows or I'm hanging in a group show, you know, like I still have like this self-consciousness and insecurity, like that I'm like two drunk grade school kids trying to hang out at the high school party. And eventually like the grade school kids get too drunk and fall out of the trench coat. And everybody's like, oh, like we knew he wasn't the real deal. But it's always like so awesome to hear. And you know, sometimes I got to check myself and not at all get arrogant, but, you know, just confident, like, shit, I'm doing it. Like, I make a living as an artist. Like, somebody made a post on social media the other day. They're like, oh, I'm looking for a professional artist. And somebody tagged me in it. And I'm like, oh, LOL. And then I'm like, whoa, wait. Yeah, I kind of am.
You kind of am.
But I hope I maintain, like, just, you know, always be grateful. Yeah. And like stoked to be invited to the party by all the other artists. And like the thing on those heads, like I'm such a pain in the ass. And I will say that because, you know, like I did a lot of art when I was little, and then all of life went off the rails for a while and started again, just dabbling in my mid-30s. And my friend that suggested I paint with him, I didn't want to do it. But I didn't want my new friend to think I was a dickhead, so I was over at his house and like painted in the studio with him. Yeah. And then started getting serious about it, like really almost exactly a decade ago. It was like the Friday of Memorial Day weekend, 2010, and that was when I obsessively started painting all day, every day.
So that was 20 years ago this previous week.
10
years ago this previous week.
Yes. Yeah. And
a whole decade of head.
So with the heads, it was another similar thing, like a good friend of mine, Charles Wentz, who's like a prolific Columbus artist and painter. And he's probably one of the first people in town that I kind of like was like, oh, wow, like his paintings are amazing. I was maybe 19 and seeing his stuff around Columbus. And, you know, we've gotten to be good friends over the years. And you know, I'm hanging out at his house, and he had gotten a new scroll saw, and he kept saying, like, well, why don't you cut some shapes out on my scroll saw and paint them? And I was like, because I don't want to.
Yeah, that's fucking stupid.
And then I'd be over there again, and I'm like, oh, here we are with the scroll saw again. And a couple times I cut
like, I just want to go smoke a bowl real quick. And...
Well, no, it was... This would have been after I got sober.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This was probably like...
so that's even worse. You're sober and you're like, man, I really don't want to be here.
Yeah, and I'm being different. Well, I wanted to hang out, but I just didn't want to cut out any shapes, you know? And and so finally he gives me a shape that he had cut out. And, I immediately saw a monkey because it was... like clearly like a head, but the ears were really big, which made me think of a monkey, and it looked like it had a little bellhop's hat on, so it kind of reminded me of like, the old organ grinder monkeys or the, I think it's an organ grinder.
Yeah.
And so I still had it for a few months and didn't paint it, and one day I was, it's like, I'm going to paint a monkey with wearing a bellhop's hat on that thing, and I posted it on Facebook, and within like less than a half hour. Somebody's like, I want to buy that. The light bulb goes off. And then had a window show.
How much did you get for it? If you don't mind me asking.
$40. Oh, I used to come real cheap.
Yeah.
And I'm probably still really cheap, like in comparison to, what art can and does sell for.
It's demand and popularity.
Yeah. And at the same time too, like I don't want to, maybe I could keep pushing it and I very, very slowly push the prices up, but like, man, everybody deserves art. Like it shouldn't be a matter of
affordability,
of finances.
Yeah.
And so even lots of times if I've got lots of stuff left over and there's nothing coming up that I need to hang it for, I'll just be like, yo, fire sale. Like,
how do you come up with, other than like commission pieces where somebody says, I'll pay you to do this head? Do you just look at like influences or just pop culture or?
I guess like different things. In 2017, I had a show in Baltimore, and it was my first time showing in Baltimore. I've got like some really, really good friends there, and I'm a huge fan of The Wire. Like as far as like any TV shows of that nature, like that one hands down is my all-time favorite.
Right.
And I've probably watched the whole thing maybe 6 times. Just watched it again recently with Tamara, my girlfriend. And I'm also a huge John Waters fan and have been probably since, I don't know, sometime in high school.
I was really jealous that you got to meet him.
Oh, he was so awesome and engaging.
Yeah.
And like, I'm always worried about bugging famous people. And he was the one who pulled me in for a photo. Like, just a sweet
But you
man.
were there for another reason, though, right?
I was there to see a show.
Oh, okay.
Like,
I thought you were invited or something.
No.
Okay.
There was like a retrospective show that he had up at the Wexner Center.
Right.
And so I was there for that. And then people were like, dude, there's John Waters. Like, show him the portraits you painted of him. And they kind of pushed me towards him. I'm like, no, I'm too shy.
Yeah.
But, being... that I'm a huge Wire fan, a huge John Waters fan. Like, that was just a go-to to paint a bunch of portraits for this Baltimore show. It's like, my love letter to Baltimore. I've always had an insatiable appetite for music, movies, books. I'm not really a big sports fan, but I like characters. So there'll always be some people in sports I think are really neat just because, they're a wild character. And so if I'm painting...
Was that part of the Big Red Machine that you did?
Yes. That was a commission.
Yeah.
So with like that in mind, there's always endless people that I could paint. And if I'm just painting some for myself, I'll go that route and
see if it sticks. And somebody will love that shit.
Like there was like an example, 2014, summer of 2014, I'm sick because I'm not sick. I'm getting well actually, but I'm on Hep C medication because I had hepatitis C from shooting dope with dirty needles, before I got clean. And so I'm really not working at all. And I've got a list of commissions, and fortunately everybody's being really patient. They're like, when you feel better, paint our stuff. There's no hurry. And I'm broke because I'm not working. And so I had a couple days, in that, frame of being where I'm like, I feel like painting. So instead of painting any of my commissions, I paint Chuck Biscuits just because he's one of my favorite drummers.
Yeah.
So it could go, it'll go that route.
I remember watching him and I was like, man, that dude's literally like standing up.
Yeah. He sits tall.
Yeah, he's like.
And I don't necessarily know if he sat that tall with Black Flag, but he definitely did with Danzig.
Yeah.
And he's a beast.
Right, and he passed away.
Did he?
Yeah, a long time ago.
That blows me away. Like, I'll try to look online to see.
I'm gonna look it up just because. So you got commissioned. I don't want to go into how often, but like, how many heads have you done, roughly?
I've got, like, in the folder that I put them in, I number them. Probably around 350. Very loose 350 at this point.
No, he's still alive.
Okay. He's just so off the radar, though.
Yeah, I thought maybe it was like one of those things somebody put on there and it was just like, no. I hate the ones when people put somebody passed away. Is like they act like they don't know. They're like, oh man, it's so sad. But people are like, bro, that was like 5 years ago.
Like, I gotta wonder, and I don't mean to like diss anybody that does that, because like people make mistakes, but like sometimes I wonder, like, what happened that you're just now finding that? Like,
it's
today?
Articles. Whenever I don't post any of that stuff anymore, just because back in the day I used to get butt ass drunk and just troll like a motherfucker. I would just go on there and just start rambling on people and be like, you don't know what you're talking about. Even if I didn't care about it, I just like, you don't know. But like, if I ever go to post something, I always look at the date, because that could be very effective on what, is going on in the climate today.
Dude, I am so grateful I am sober in the age of like social media and camera phones and all that stuff, because
you probably wouldn't be alive today.
Oh, correct. Yeah. Correct.
But not by any other thing, just like, saying something wrong, taking pictures of something. I mean,
but as far as like notoriety, like it would be like, some Columbus version of like Scott Weiland, like fucking up all the time. Like, I remember at one point in 2000, one of my bandmates was like, dude, I'm hearing bad stuff about you. Like, somebody told me like that they saw you sleeping in some trash behind, in back of High Street. Dude, I was so pissed, but actually, like, because I didn't remember sleeping in any trash. It probably happened. But, like, all the stuff I was doing, like sleeping in some trash behind a bar on High Street, would have been, like, on the really positive side of things I was doing with my life.
On my 30th birthday, I'm 44. I've been sober for 6 years. 6 years next month, actually.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
But on my 30th birthday, which would have been 2005, I think. I don't even know. I got really drunk at the Blue Danube, and then my daughter's mother and I went to a Jive Turkey show at Andy Mann's Treehouse. And we went back to the Blue Danube. I'm like, let's go back. We took a cab back to the Blue Danube, and I got so drunk that we started walking. Her stepdad lived on High Street, way down by like Nancy's home cooking. And we started walking, and I didn't make it. I woke up by somebody opening up their door and saying, "What the fuck are you doing on my front porch?"
Ugh.
And I was like, I'm just sleeping on your couch, man. I'll leave. I'm out of here, bro. I'm out. And I knew, I had always known that I had a problem. It wasn't, I had known. It wasn't, I just never wanted to quit, obviously. But after that, I was like, man, I've got a child. I think I should probably do something about this. And I never did until 6 years ago. It took me that long.
It takes a while. Like, the first time I ever went to, like, any kind of 12-step meeting, I was 20. First time I went to any kind of detox, I was 23. Mm-hmm. First time I started doing any kind of, like, going to any kind of meetings with regularity, I was 24. I went to treatment at 31. Like, mm-hmm. it takes a long time. And I'm not sure... like, I've got a 30th birthday story, and it's, and I still didn't even, the day after my 30th birthday, I went to detox again. Yeah. And still didn't even stay clean after that. I
went to Parkside.
That's the only one I haven't been to, but I've done the tour of Franklin County detoxes.
I never paid for it, but I went there.
And I don't know.
And I don't think they're still open. And if they are, I hope they're not listening, because I owe them money.
They might be.
Yeah. If they know either one of us, they're probably. What did I do? I went to Europe and hung out with a friend for about 6 weeks, 5 weeks. Anyway, I had a ton of money, and I was on drugs every single day I was there. I remember it. I remember being there, but I was just high every day. And when I got home, I called my dad. I had roommates and stuff. I called my dad. I was like, I need to go get help. And when I went, I cleaned up. And when I got out, I was sober for 50 days. And I'm like, fuck, I need a drink. So I went back to drinking, but I never touched any of the hard stuff again. And it was rationalizing being an alcoholic. You know what I mean? And I continued to be a drunk for 15 years, 14 years.
I'd do a lot of stuff like that. Like I would separate it all. Like there's drugs, and there's different kinds of drugs, and there's booze.
Right.
And
this stuff isn't that bad.
And if I had a heroin habit, I couldn't hold booze. Like I would try, and I would just puke it up. So I'd quit spending the money on it. And so then I'd get out of detox, and I'd think, I can have some cocktails, like, because this stuff's different. And it really took being in treatment. I went late 2000, and I finally got a grip on, like, my genetics are just different. Like, I would think that I had successfully pulled off social drinking, but really what it was I was in trouble with people, and if I had more than a few, I was going to be, in more trouble with them.
Yeah.
And then even then I'd sneak a little bit, I'm going to the bathroom. I'm doing finger quotes here.
Yeah.
Chug a bunch of shots, do some blow in the bathroom, and I'm social drinking.
Yeah. That's probably, it's hard to say, but if you were a fan of The Wire, our friend Steve Earle.
Oh, yes.
Was our counselor for a while.
What?
Yeah. He was on that show.
No, like he was your counselor?
No, on the show.
Oh, God.
He was the counselor.
Yes. He was Bubble sponsor.
Right. Yeah. So
Waylon. His name was Waylon.
So you could identify with that show in the means of, hey, I've been to jail before. I've never been in prison. That was a prison show, wasn't it? I'm starting to think I'm confusing.
No, the Wire was...
a cop show.
Yeah. And it was... like drug dealing in Baltimore.
Was Steve Earle in that? Or am I thinking?
No, Steve Earle was in it. He
Yeah.
was like one of the characters, Bubbles, was a junkie.
Okay.
And goes back and forth on trying to get clean. And by the end of the show, he stayed clean for a little bit. And Steve Earle is his like 12-step group sponsor.
Right.
And his like main sport person.
Right. Yeah. So I was a fan of Steve Earle before that, but we just see that character.
Oh, I really
because
did.
he's a sober person now.
Yeah, in real life.
That's always been like inspiration for me. When I found out that you were sober, I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah, because I should be dead, like for real.
We both should be. I mean,
and Steve Earle was like in the '90s when, I started finding out, about like his sobriety story. He was inspirational, and but it still took a few years before I finally got it.
Yeah, I was at Cafe Bourbon Street. This was probably 1997. And I would work the door. You know where that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would work the door so I could drink for free. And the bartender was Sarisa, and she would be like, don't worry about it. You can just work, just check IDs. I'm like, sweet. And I'd been drinking those big mason jar drinks. They either served it in a little mason jar with a handle or a big mason jar, and it was just a mason jar. And there was a party going on across the street, and they were like, come over across the street when you're done. We got plenty, we got keg, we got whatever. And so I went over there. After I was done, it was probably about like 1 o'clock. They're like, we don't need you to watch the door anymore. So I ran over there, and their keg was gone. But they had bottles of stuff. So I'm drinking this crap called 99 Bananas. It was so nasty because I hate bananas. But they were like, here's the drunk guy. He'll drink that. Drink this. You can have all you want. So I drank that whole bottle of 99 Bananas. And there was this dude, Dean. He reminded me of, I don't know what his last name was. I wouldn't say it anyway. But he reminded me of Johnny Knoxville.
Okay.
He was very charismatic and very good looking and everything. And everybody liked him. He was like, hey, we're going to go to Nancy's Home Cooking. I think they're going to open in like an hour or whatever. I'm like, I just want to go home. Can you drop me off? I think he didn't hear me say I want to go home. He was just like, can you drop me off? And so it's like 5 a.m. I've been drinking all night. We load up in this car, and we're driving down the street, and I'm like tunnel vision. And I'm like, wait a minute, drop me off. I don't want to go anymore. I wanted to go home, which is that way, so just stop the car, let me out. I saw a bridge. I thought it was Iuka. I'm like, just drop me out. So they pull over. They're like, we're not dropping you off. I'm like, drop me off. They open the door. I get out. They drive away. I'm down on 2nd Avenue.
Oh, shit.
5 o'clock in the morning. It's still dark. It's summertime. You look up at the lights. They're this amber light, and you can see the bugs flying around them. And I look away, and there's no light there anymore because I got tunnel vision. I'm like, I better start walking. So I start walking like on 4th, I think. And I'm like, well, I got to go. I live on Maynard, so I got to cut this way and kind of go that way. I'm downtown. I'm not thinking straight. So I cut down this alleyway, and these guys get out from behind, out of the shadows. They get out. And I said, look, I don't have anything. And I'm drunk. I don't have any money. I don't have it. Bam. My head hits the cement. And it's in the alleyway, so there's little pieces of gravel up on my cheek, all over my arms. There's little pieces of gravel. I'm like, just leave me alone. I don't have anything. And I feel my chain wallet get ripped from my pants. I'm like, God, they're going to kill me. And that's what they say. They go, if you get up, we're going to kill you. I'm like, well, shit. What am I going to do? Right? And I'm like, well, I can't scream, because nobody's going to do anything. And so they take everything. They're hitting me with pipes. They're kicking me. They're calling me names and everything. And I'm like, okay, there's a break in the action. I get up, and they're like, they're like hollering at each other to hit me one more time. I just take off running. I run and I run and I run. And I go through these houses. And I run out in front of somebody. This guy slams on the brakes, and it's raining now. I've got blood gushing out in my head, right? It's coming all down my face and in my facial hair and everything. And the dude, he had his lights on. He gets out of his car. It's this, like, what seems to be like this 12-foot black guy, probably 350, 400 pounds. But in reality, he was probably like, 6 foot. But he was huge, like a linebacker. And he's like, get in. I'm like, okay. I'm crying. I'm bawling. And he's like, where do you want to go? I'm like, well, I live 400 East Maynard. So he starts driving, pulls up, gets out of the car, gets me out because I'm drunk. I'm bleeding all over. He was driving a brand new Cherokee with leather interior. I had blood all over that thing. He gets out. He carries me up the steps. 400. There's some a store, an alley, and then there's my house. And I live with Josh Kaiser.
Oh, okay.
And he carries me up the steps, sets me down, knocks on the door. There's a hole in the door from where one of us punched through it like a week before. 'Cause we get drunk, we just punch shit. And he opened. Josh was up. He was up playing his guitar and stuff because he worked nights. He got off, worked at Blue Danube or whatever. Opened up the door. He's like, what the hell? That dude was gone. He was already gone. Next thing you know, cops are there. The fire engine was there. Squad
called you an ambulance.
Called me. He was like, I was like, man, I don't believe in guardian angels.
I was thinking that same term.
But that guy was there for a reason, because they were behind me. I know those guys were after me.
And I know from experience, a combination of being like overly inebriated on whatever, combined with head trauma, combined with like trying to run and navigate stuff, like does not work out well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they told Josh, they were like, we can't do anything. We're not going to take him in. And when I have him on, he's going to come on in a couple weeks. We'll kind of elaborate on the story to get his version. But they were like, what? Don't let him fall asleep, and don't let him stop breathing, basically. He took me upstairs to the bathroom, took my clothes off, put me in the shower, made me wash all the blood off, took me back downstairs, laid me on the couch, watched me fall asleep, and sat there for 3 hours watching my chest go up and down.
It's a good dude.
Yeah, he's a very good dude. He's a solid guy. I mean, we all do stupid stuff, and that didn't stop. That was not a wake-up call. That was not.
Yeah, I can.
It was just like the next day.
That's just a little hiccup.
I had the whole side of the right side of my face was all severely bruised, disfigured. I went in. I sat down beside Dean the next day at Cafe Bourbon Street because he was there. He was always there. I sat down and he was like, "Hey, what's up, dude?" And I got up and I walked to the other side and I'm like, "Not much." And he was like, "Holy shit, what happened to you?" I'm like, "You dropped me off at 5 o'clock in the morning downtown Columbus." But it was my fault,
One would think like a story involving like some kind of drink called 99 Bananas would be more festive.
You want to take a little break?
Yeah.
All right. We wanted to talk about your writing.
Okay.
Your haikus.
Interesting about the, I'll start, similar to artwork, I always dabbled in some writing and I could definitely tell a story, but it would usually be, with the homies at one point, when I was younger, partying, with friends and telling some story about something crazy that happened. And then it's weird, like I get sober in like my life in a lot of ways, like it's less dangerous, but it's not any less crazy, and just ridiculous fun stuff would always happen that would give me material to tell stories when spending time with friends. And so I had, a little bit after getting sober, I worked in a treatment center for almost 8 years. And that was an amazing job for the stretch of time that I did it. And just due to budget reasons, I was let go in early 2010. So again, we've got like this decade mark. I was scared. It's like, I'm 40 years old. What the hell am I going to do? And I was like, well, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to get a counseling degree. I've got all this experience in the field, like I know how to do stuff like this. And having some letters and numbers after my name officially, it'll move me into a higher tax bracket.
Right.
And so it took a little while to get like my classes together. I think unbeknownst to me at the time, it was fear-based because it was really daunting, the idea of going back to school at 40. And so like every quarter, I'd have done a little bit more and I'd expect to get my schedule, but I'd missed crossing some T's and dotting some I's, or dotting some T's and crossing some I's, or what have you. So it took a year before I was enrolled in classes. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, the painting thing came up, like I'm starting to paint all day, every day. So I'm actively being creative. And this also happened during a time where like I wasn't in a band, so I'm not drumming with regularity. So, I was really needing that creative outlet, and I'm getting it from painting, but it's got like the wheels spinning. And so early 2011, I go back to school. January classes start. And, it was just a basic education requirement I needed to take to get the ball rolling. And it was an English class. And I just loved it. I've always loved reading. I wasn't doing creative writing, but was having a lot of fun writing, essays on stuff we were doing in class. And the professor was very encouraging. And so the next quarter is, and this is kind of where we're getting into, the haiku. And I made a decision. It's like, what? I love this so much. Like, I don't want to be a counselor. I really had to kind of look within, and it's like, what? Like, I'm burned out. Like, there's a statistic I read somewhere, I'm not 100% sure of its accuracy, but I've read it in more than just one place. And that, certain people suffer from a 7-year burnout in social work. And I think that was me. I was tired of going to clients' funerals. That's a reality of the situation.
Right. Comes with the gig.
Yes. And if I'm going to clock in a place like that, I need to be in 100%. Otherwise, I'm just hanging out and collecting a paycheck. Like, those guys deserve something, from me. It's a special needs client base for sure.
Yeah.
Lots of compassion and lots of patience. And I was just kind of drained, admittedly. And so it's like, I'm going to get a degree in English and creative writing. And some of my friends are like, what are you going to do with that? Work at the gas station? I was like, I don't care. I'm going to have fun at school. I'm going to roll a dice and take these classes
and see, a lot of times, not to interject, but sometimes it's like it's not necessarily what you're going to get. It's about the environment.
Yeah.
You're going to be with like-minded people mostly. You can bounce ideas around these people, and you're going to be learning your ass off. So I know what you mean. It's like, it's not about the degree. It's not about that. It's about what I'm passionate about.
And I'm a self-taught drummer. I'm a self-taught artist, and I could see that I had some ideas that were good for writing, but I needed a formal education to help me start to structure all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I did spend a lot of time with a lot of amazing people, both my instructors and professors, as well as, and they were mostly way younger, but like my classmates were delightful. And I've got some grouchy fucking friends that'll like badmouth millennials. And I'm like, millennials made me a better writer. Like these younger people were awesome. Some of them I'm still really good friends with. And lots of,
it's just the same way as boomers.
Yeah.
Badmouth Gen Xers.
Yeah.
It's just, we're grouchy.
But so I think it was my third quarter in school, and I'm taking a poetry class. And this is where like the haiku comes in, and then also gets things back to Steve Earle a little bit.
Okay.
It's just crazy timing. Like I've got a really good friend, Danny Bland, and he tour manages different musicians. One of his main gigs is tour managing Dave Alvin, and I'd run into him. I forget, he was doing some kind of, on the road work, and he had been in town. So, like summer of 2011. So we'd seen each other again and got to visit. And it was like a little bit after that hang, like I'm scrolling through Facebook, and it happens to be the exact same week in my poetry class that we're studying haiku with the Japanese masters, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
And a lot of times like haiku, it can get a bad rap, like, the dirty limerick. It's like, okay, you can just write some dumb stuff and make it fit this 5-7-5 syllable structure. But I'm scrolling through Facebook and like his haiku stuck out. Like, people are posting about their food or some stuff they did or like some other silly stuff. And then all of a sudden there's, it's a really small post because it's only, 17 syllables long. And I'm like, man, these are dope.
Yeah.
And it's not, there's like this element, because like the Japanese masters, it, always had to be about nature. And, if you really kind of twisted that a little bit, like, some of Danny's haikus like fit like a different kind of nature. It's, like concrete and, they were gritty and they had a lot of heart. And I messaged him. I'm like, dude, these are amazing. Like seeing him every day, like, the light bulb goes off. I'm like, what's going on here? This isn't just a one-time thing. It's a once-a-day thing.
And we at this point, you already knew what haikus were.
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't nothing new. It was just that you would start thinking about it more.
Yeah, and I hadn't seen him like he was writing them. And so I messaged him. He's like, I made a commitment to myself. I'm going to post one a day for a year, and I think you should do it too. So I did it. And then like early 2012, we were hanging out again. I was in Los Angeles and had a gig working with him on the red carpet set of the Grammys. Like he was the production manager of like the whole set, and I was production assistant, which meant like I got coffee and stuff like that.
And just like looked at all these people.
Yeah, and hung out with him all day. It was like maybe a 12-day job. But we talked about all kinds of stuff, but we're really talking about the haiku. And just, he's used to being around a variety of famous people due to his line of work, so it's probably not as big a deal to him. But the story, from where I'm sitting, it just sounds surreal. He was like, oh, yeah, I was in a group of guys that, the first time I'd made this commitment to write and post one a day for a year, I don't know how long he lasted, but he quit doing it. And he was saying like, oh, it was Steve Earle and Jeff Bridges. And it was just like such a wild assortment of people. My mind was kind of blown.
Yeah.
So in a roundabout way, we were talking about Steve Earle before the break, like, Steve Earle planted the seed in Danny's head to do this exercise, who then got me to do it. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the first year I was talking to him, I'm like, dude, this has become such a part of my daily routine that like, I don't feel accomplished if I quit. the idea of quitting is making me anxious.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, let's do another year. And so I wrote and posted a haiku a day, sometimes more, for 3 years straight. And then since then, like, I do it sporadically, but it's still a regular thing. And the idea of the book, like, it just kind of came about in phases from, Danny had put one out. And I started thinking I wanted to do it, and I had different ideas of how I wanted to go about doing it. And like, even when I first talked to Ken at Nick's Comics, and he was really interested in doing it, like, there were things in the formatting that very organically and naturally started falling into place. Like, Rob Jones did some artwork, Allie McGregor did some artwork. One point, Allie was like, well, why don't we make it a flip book? And I was like, oh, wild. So if, you're looking at the front cover, all Robs go, and then suddenly everything's upside down. But like, if you just flip it and look at the back cover,
right,
like, then that's all Allie's artwork, and it meets in the middle. And even kind of thematically, I did my best to, for it to kind of start and end each half with the same vibe and
thematically.
Yeah. I mean, there's issues of drug addiction and mental health stuff and love and lust and heartbreak and really, really dark, frames of mind. And some of it just fun stuff, about like musicians or about like characters in movies or just all around silliness.
Right. Yeah, that's wild stuff. And what happened? Did that just fall through, or?
Oh no, there's like I said a little bit ago, like, I completely spaced when I left, or I would have brought you a copy.
Oh, that's what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Dag it, man. Next time.
I'll get one to you. I'll get one to you.
That's interesting. I didn't know that you actually.
And then, like, for that poetry class, I wrote some longer poems, but for the longest time, like, I stuck with the haiku, and then with writing, like, where I was really excelling and what I was really loving writing when I was in school was fiction, short stories, and creative nonfiction. And at OSU, I won some awards for both. And like, one of these days, I'd like to, that might be one of my next writing endeavors, is to compile a book of the short stories and have friends do artwork again.
Right.
And it wasn't until maybe it was early 2017 I started going to Writer's Block Poetry, which my friend Scott Woods, it's his open mic poetry show, and it's at Cafe Kerouac, and which is right down the street from my crib. And like, Scott and I, like, were introduced by a mutual friend on Facebook. And I went to one of his lectures. Like, it was a really amazing lecture. And I was like, I got to start checking out this poetry thing. And I'm so funny. Like, if stuff has been going on in Columbus for a really long time and like, for whatever reason, I haven't heard of it yet, I've always got this attitude, like, God damn it, like, motherfuckers are keeping secrets.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
But so I started going to Writer's Block with regularity.
Feel like you're missing out.
Yeah. And finally got up the nerve to read some stuff. And I read some older things. And then on my 49th birthday, which was in 2018. It was like 20th anniversary of Writer's Block. And I was like, fuck, man, I got to write something brand new for the 20th anniversary. And it's not like I've done it a ton, but since then I have written more longer poems.
Yeah, I used to write a lot. I started going, like, our lives are so parallel. It's crazy. I'm probably going to edit this out, but like, I went to go back to school about 5 years ago. So right when I sobered up, I'm like, I missed out on a lot of shit. So I'm like, I'm gonna enroll. I'm gonna do this. My sales were, the wind was in my sails. And then, like, I went to Columbus State. I talked to an advisor, and they were like, okay, this is what you need to do. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to do that. Do your FAFSA. All that stuff. I did all that stuff, and I'm not seeing anything in my my financial aid. You go on the browser and you do all this stuff on the Cougar web.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's not doing anything. I don't feel good right now because there's no money there. I don't know what to do. I'm supposed to be getting some financial aid. It's not there. First day of classes start, I call. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I don't have money to go get books. They're like, well, go just buy the books and you get paid back. I'm like, I don't have any money, right? And so, like, what it turns out was I finally got through to somebody who knew something, and they were like, well, I see what it is. 18 years ago, you dropped out. They're not going to give you any money until you either pay for a class or a couple classes or write an appeal and whatever. And that wind was gone. And I was just like, fuck it. I'm not doing it. It was a stupid idea anyway, And then several years later, my daughter's getting older. She's 16. And I'm like, if I don't do this now, when she graduates, I just probably won't ever do it. I'll just go back to drinking or whatever. I was thinking that this is the time I got to do it. So I started going back about a year and a half ago. And so I'm working, going to school, and preparing this podcast type vodcast thing. And I went through other things, like I was into real estate photography, real estate cinematography, 4K real estate stuff, wedding photography. I don't want to do weddings. But I'm like, I'm creative. I want to do cinematic stuff. I want to create. And so I'm like, I'm going to go back. I'm going to change my major to film studies. So I'm on the track to do film studies, but I'm actually thinking about calling off this summer because it just started yesterday or 2 days ago, whenever. Summer semester. I can't do it. I just don't have the time or energy to do this, my other job, and editing and school. But last summer, my first semester back to school in 20 years, they published a paper in the textbook that I wrote.
Oh, that's dope. That's dope.
And I was like, you know what? I still kind of have it.
Dude, going back to school as an adult, like I was 41.
Yeah.
And I went right after high school and just did miserable because I was like an alcoholic and a drug addict and a drug dealer. And like I was majoring in photography, but like, my actions were more like I was majoring in like getting a buzz, getting VD all the time for crabs. And, so some classes I did good in, other ones I didn't. I eventually drop out just because I'm bottoming out at life.
Yeah.
And like going back to college at 41 and doing well and like really working at it, like it did wonders for my self-esteem and my confidence and was fun. Like I really enjoyed it. Like some of it was
crazy that you're saying this because when I've been out of the loop, I would be at like events and I just don't talk to people. It's not that I'm scared or anything like that. I just don't have anything to say. I don't
think you don't have anything to say. You probably do.
Well, I don't like small talk. This is deep. This is like, something that I would, if I was talking to you at like, say, an event somewhere. I remember I was talking to you at Naomi Brown's punk rock flea market. And literally people have to pull you away sometimes. Like because you get into a conversation like this and it's just like you're connecting with somebody. It's not this stupid shit.
I like connecting. Small talk makes me anxious.
Right. Yeah, I don't like it.
Like I'll literally, if within somewhere between the half hour and 45-minute mark, if it's just like constant small talk, like I'm going to have an anxiety attack.
Yeah, and I'm going to bail. It's time to go. It's like I'm looking at my watch.
And even like I'll tell people like certain things that might be like small talk, finger quotes, subjects. If one of my friends is telling me like that they like this song or they like a movie, I want to dig into that. Yeah. Why do you like this song and this record so much? Like, is it the guitars? Is it the rhythm? Is it the lyrics? Yeah. Is it a combination of all of the above? Well, if it's the guitar, like, is it like the tone? Is it the notes? Like, like I want to ask all these questions to like really dig in and then I'm really getting to know somebody.
My point is, you went for so long without enriching your brain with knowledge that when you went back, it's almost like an overload. You know what I mean? It's like this is what I needed. Well, I needed this shot of.
I got to start spilling stuff out.
Right.
Like earlier, I'd mentioned ever since I was a little kid, I had an insatiable appetite for music, movies, books, all kinds of stuff. And so being in bands, I got to play the drums and work with, all that music I pumped into my system. Now I'm starting to paint. So visual elements of movies, I'll be able to put stuff out there visually, but like all the books that I read, and there's all this stuff bouncing around and it was just good timing. I guess I was like ready to do it and I got some encouragement. And so all this, writing just started spilling out. And at first it was like a stream of consciousness mess. But like I said before, like the education helped me start putting form to it.
Right.
To make it more user-friendly to the readers.
Yeah. And that education was a kickstart. Like I would always, if somebody ever says, I don't want to go back, just go back. Just for a quarter or a semester. Just do something that you think you want to do, no matter if it's like, some people think, I used to think, you're going to take a pottery class? That's fucking stupid. That's dumb. Why would you pay to do that? But it actually rejuvenates your mind.
It's stimulating.
Right. Now changing the tune just a little bit. 1984.
Okay.
I met this dude. I was in 4th grade. He was new to the area. He was new to the school, right? And
was it Whittier?
Yeah. And so I met this dude and he was cool. He was weird. He was like eccentric and everything. And I mean, this 9-year-old dude, right? And he had a skateboard and he was cool and it was his birthday and he invited all these motherfuckers over to his birthday party. And we get there and I'm like, I really like this dude. This dude's cool. He's new. He's different, right? And then we left. And I would go back over to his house every once in a while. And he was introducing me to all this different stuff, like the Violent Femmes. And at that point, I was Beat Street. I was Run DMC, Fat Boys, Grandmaster Flash, Prince, Michael Jackson. I had the Michael Jackson jacket and the parachute pants. And here comes this dude and this like, this dude's different. And he was like, why don't you come over, man? Why don't you come over? So I go over to his house. His mom was killer. She was like, I kind of had the hots for her because she was so nice and she was young. She was a young mom. I'm like, wow. And so I liked being over there. And he introduced me to the Violent Femmes and like the Clash. There was the Sex Pistols. I'm like, what in the world is this stuff, right? This is cool, And he had this guitar. And the guitar had like 3 strings on it. And he was like, you don't want to play that. That's broken. That's my uncle's guitar. I'm like, well, I'm going to play it. And he would always talk about his uncle and how he lived in St. Louis. It wasn't St. Louis. It was St. Louis. And I'm like, why do you call it St. Louis? He's like, that's where people call it from there. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. And I picked up and I started playing. I started playing Louie Louie. And after that, I went home. I was like, man, this dude's so cool. I told my dad, I'm like, can you please go get me a guitar? He's like, no, I'm not going to go get you a guitar. But he went and got me a guitar. And that's when I started playing music because I wanted to impress this dude. And I remember one time his uncle was there. And he was like, this is my Uncle Kent. I'm like, oh, wow, man, this is the dude that he was always talking about. This is the dude from St. Louis, And then when I saw you, I remember the last time I saw Gabe alive. Like we lost contact, but whenever we saw each other, it was like, hey, how are you doing? We loved each other like friends. It was like we had a connection. And the last time I saw him, it wasn't good. Like he was sick and he was different. He looked different. He had gained a ton of weight. I'm like, he was like, hey, Jason. I'm like, I'm like, I don't even know who this is. That you? Is that Gabe?
Yeah, it got bad fast. Like, Gabe's like my little brother. We're really close in age. We're 5 years apart. When we were little, of course, older and younger brothers do that are around each other all the time. We'd fuck with each other. Mm-hmm. But there definitely got to be a point in time where that wasn't fun anymore. And we were close, but we got really close without like the antagonistic qualities.
Yeah.
And you're mentioning like he turned you on to stuff, like he turned me on to stuff. I was just telling a story yesterday. It's my sophomore year in high school, and that was the year that like Dee Dee and Gabe would come and visit all the time. And his mom, you know, he mentioned Dee Dee, she turned me on to tons of stuff, like
Yeah.
so much music. And so like my parents are gone, and Dee Dee might have been out. So it's just me and Gabe at the house. And I'm going to be honest, I was smoking some weed.
Right.
And I hear this noise coming out of his room. And I'm like, man, I'm responsible for him. Like, what the fuck's going on? Like, it sounded like ambulances with their sirens on repeatedly crashing and somebody howling that was in pain. And so I knock on the door. I'm like, what's going on in there? He was listening to the Butthole Surfers. And I'd never heard the Butthole Surfers before. And it was Barbecue Pope. And, you know, so if I'm sophomore, that makes me 15. He's like 10.
Isn't that crazy?
So this 10-year-old kid's turning me on to the Butthole Surfers.
Yeah.
And, like, he was a great guitar player, great artist. But, like, to kind of fast forward to what you were saying, you know, like, my own alcoholism and drug addiction and his alcoholism and drug addiction, you know, that was stuff that would get in the way of our closeness and the amount of time we spent together. And, you know, after I got clean, we would still see each other, but, you know, not as regularly. And, you know, we still had some great times and some great laughs. Like, I can hear his laugh in my head all the time. It always makes me really happy. But, like, he had gotten, it was maybe 2006, like, he had to get some hip surgery. And there was a little stretch of time I hadn't seen him. And then, and he didn't look great, but he didn't look bad. You know, he looked like somebody that was young and was partying too much. But then Christmas of that year, I saw him, and I didn't know he was coming, like with my sister, to my mom and stepdad's when they still lived in town. And so I hear Gabe's voice. I'm like, oh, I'm all excited. Like, Gabe's here. And then I saw him, and he was just so, like, in such a short amount of time, he got so bloated. And I was like, all right, I kind of recognize that as Gabe. It's totally his voice, but his face is so puffy.
That's what I'm saying.
And then, you know, it was less than a year he died.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw him. I was like, he passed away, and I was like, I literally just saw him like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. It was like, I hadn't seen him in a long time. And then I see him. And maybe 2 weeks later, I find out that he had passed away, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
I didn't expect it, but it didn't surprise me.
Right? Yeah. It was. You know, we know him. We know what he did, and all that stuff. And it's like that old. How old was he?
32.
32. It's like that thing where, like, you know, some people burn out. You burn out or you fade away. He burned out, but like. When I saw you, I was like, where do I know that dude from? And then when somebody was like, oh, that's Kent. I'm like, Kent? But it was like 30 years ago. And I still remembered your face.
Yeah, under this, I got a baby face.
Well, I mean, that's true. However, I saw that picture that somebody posted recently and tagged you in it.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they tagged you in it, but it was there. It's like it was you. I'm like, that's Kent from.
I still had that heinous mullet, you know, that were popular in the 80s.
Yeah, but he talked about you relentlessly, man. He was like, this is my uncle, you know, from St. Louis. And
well, Gabe was from St. Louis too.
I know, but he would say, oh, we're going like, you know, spring break's coming up, and it's time for us to get together. And I'm like, but he's going to St. Louis. I'm like, God damn it, you're going to St. Louis. I mean. You know, I didn't have a crush on him or anything, but he was my dude. You know?
No, I get it.
We all had friends, and he was one of them that it was fun to be around. And he was fun to be around. I remember in high school, he had him and I don't know if I should say his name. There was another dude that he ran around with. I don't even know what happened to this guy, but they put these suction cups on their foreheads. Do you remember that? Did anybody ever tell you about that?
Maybe.
This is in high school. At Westerville South, and they put suction cups on their foreheads and made these big circles. And like, I think they were suspended or something. And they were like, we were just like, what are these guys doing? They're insane. These guys are literally insane.
That's crazy thinking about like when Gabe and I were in a band together. You know, I was 23. You know, I might have been the second oldest guy in the band. Like Paul was he was probably the oldest. He was probably pushing 30, and then Diego and Mike were like a year younger than me. You know, but we're all in our 20s. I mean, Gabe he wasn't going anymore, but he would have been in high school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so he was like 16 or 17, like playing guitar in our band, like playing at stashes and like the older Columbus music clubs. And, he could fucking shred like at that age. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that was man. I can picture him in my head now. Like, that was one of Gabe's.
Hair, and you just walk like that, and I don't know. I might edit that out. I don't like saying people's names if they're not.
I can respect that. If they're not here to potentially defend themselves if necessary.
Yeah, like they're lying. Babe, I don't know what he's talking about.
You didn't say anything too bad, like a lot of people get suspended from high school.
Right.
Well, at least maybe not, but that's how I look at it. That's my norm.
Yeah.
Other folks maybe not so much.
Yeah, it was pretty common with my group of friends.
I mean, I can think about things that I think are like really common or really normal. Like, again, in my early 20s, like I'd start dating somebody and I was telling one of my fucking raunchy ass stories about getting crabs. And I was like, well, you've had crabs, right? And she was like, no.
Right.
And I was, well, I've kind of had them all the time.
Yeah. Don't look at my medicine cabinet if you know what's best for you. All right. Well, I want to have you on again sometime.
I'll come back anytime.
What's coming up?
Potentially, like, man, everything. It's such a weird
time right now.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So whether it'll actually be, potentially something in Baltimore, but like I'm not sure. That might be a little too soon. And I don't know that the venue would allow for, like a video show like a lot of people are doing. Mm-hmm. What's definitely coming up is my man Scott Woods. I'd mentioned him earlier. He's got a venue on East Main Street called Streetlight Guild. Mm-hmm. They do all kinds of dope stuff there. And me and my friend Frank Lawson have an art show.
Okay.
And there'll be some of the heads, but there's going to be a lot of bigger paintings. Some of he and I collaborated on the same painting. Other ones we've painted stuff to kind of complement each other that'll be hanging next to each other, and then just a bunch of our own stuff. Mm-hmm. One of the pieces I'm really excited about, we're doing like a fictional comic book cover, and that'll have lots of wood cutouts, but it's going to be all like anthropomorphic animals,
right?
Like a science fiction kind of outer space thing, but completely absurd and ridiculous, as you'd expect.
Right. That's
like the heroes crew. They're called the Yacht Squad.
That's a prerequisite.
Yeah. And
the Yacht Squad.
Yeah, just because it's absurd. Like, why the Yacht Squad? Why not?
Yeah.
And
it's a squad, and they're on a yacht.
Yeah. Well, it's a spaceship that looks like a yacht.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah. And but
it makes
that
it a little
is
hard
in
to
September.
jump in the water.
And being that Scott owns the venue, I don't know how it'll happen, but like if quarantine social distancing stuff's going on, I've seen a few, like recently Streetlight Guild did, they got all now I'm forgetting the fabric company, but anyway, it was like the Prince quilts, which were kind of like a big deal. And he had like 75 of the Prince quilts hanging in the spot, and he was able to go live, do a virtual tour. So, it's not the same as being at a gallery opening in person, but it's better than not seeing the stuff at all. Mm-hmm. And so, it could be, everybody might see it like that, and maybe Frank and I can be there with Scott as we talk about the art and, show the pieces. So that's coming up.
There was a friend of mine turned me on to an Instagram live feed from a guy in LA, I think in Venice, who does like this oddities. I've never been to LA. I'm going to go there.
I like it.
But it's Venice. There's an oddities thing. It's super hip out there. And he was just going around and showing these weird trinkets and stuff. I bet you Tiffany Boggins would know who this guy is.
I could see that.
I want to have her on.
Awesome. Tiffany's awesome.
I do. I'm afraid to talk to her, though. But maybe I'll get the nerve.
Just ask her. She's really sweet.
But this dude was going around and telling all these stories. And he told this story about this box and about how there's this baby involved and all this stuff. And he's like, and when you open the box, there's the baby. I'm like, holy crap, that's crazy.
I was.
It was a real baby inside this box. It was all mummified.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I had loose plans to go to Los Angeles at the end of the year, and I was excited. I was excited about a lot of stuff this year, but, you know, life had other plans.
Yeah. My friend Carrie was in L.A. visiting her brother when this happened. And I was like, are you going to be stuck out there? You know what I mean? Because they were canceling flights from all the different countries and everything. And I was thinking maybe they're probably going to shut down air travel here, but they didn't. And she made it home.
I've got a few different friends that like were abroad or were traveling or doing different stuff when all this stuff hit. And, you know, they've kind of got some wild stories. And, you know, of course, they're good storytellers, and their perspective and spin on it was pretty entertaining. Scary, but also, like, entertaining. Like,
yeah. This might be a two-parter. This might be like
I
might have. Well, no, I might have to split this up in half.
Oh, dig.
I mean, I know a lot of people are fans of long form, but we'll see what happens. See how I edit it out. I don't think there's going to be much editing, but you know, you're always welcome to come back. Bring the lady friend, the partner, the girlfriend.
Okay.
I bet she's got some crazy stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, she probably doesn't want to be a part of this stuff.
We keep each other entertained.
Yeah.
And she seems to like my material, which is probably why we hit it off so well. And she makes me laugh too.
I mean, it is what it is. All right, Kent. Well, you have a website. It is
KentGrosswiler.com.
Okay. And
I don't update it very often. Like, I probably need to update it. Admittedly, I'm lazy. Administrative stuff I'm lazy with.
There's some stuff on there. I checked it out.
I like the instant gratification of Facebook. And
it's hard. It's hard. I've got a website.
I don't even post to my art page on Facebook. It's just all my regular.
You know what? I subscribe to one of these online social forums that you can log on to, and when you post, it posts to everything, like Twitter, Instagram. I don't even do that.